Hey everybody, this is Lemmy from Kellerhead Audio. Today we're going to talk about compressors after eating a lot of hot sauce. Compressors belong to the dynamic processors family, meaning processors that work on the dynamics of our audio. What we have here is the C1 by Waves, which is a digital feed-forward compressor with a soft knee, and we're going to cover all of those terms in a minute. Let's dive into the most common parameters we'll find on a compressor, which are makeup gain, threshold, ratio, attack, and release. The threshold is the point of which the compressor starts to work. So anything which is below minus 10 dBFS will not be compressed. Anything which is above minus 10 dBFS will be compressed depending on the ratio level. Right now we have a ratio level of 1 to 1, meaning for each dB that we cross the threshold, 1 dB will come out. It will not be compressed. If, for example, we'll use the 2:1 ratio, that means that for each 2 dBs that cross the threshold, only 1 will go through, meaning we'll have 1 dB of compression. So if we have an input signal, which is at minus 8 dBFS, which is 2 dBs above the threshold, the output from the compressor should be minus 9 dBFS. And the more that we compress, i.e. the ratio is higher, we get higher level of compression. Now let's talk about the attack and release. Both of these parameters are time-based and are usually measured by milliseconds. The attack measures the time that it takes the compression to achieve its maximum compression from the time that the signal crossed the threshold upwards. So if we'll take the example from before, where we have a minus 8 dBFS audio, that means that from the moment that the threshold is crossed, it will take 2 milliseconds, in this example, for the compressor to achieve 1 dB of compression. If it will be 100 milliseconds, it means that it takes 100 milliseconds for the compressor to achieve the same 1 dB of compression. I heard a lot of people refer to the attack time and the release time as hold controls. That's the time that the compressor waits until it does something which is incorrect, and we're going to show it in a minute. And the same as the attack, release is usually measured in milliseconds. It refers to the time measured from the time that the signal crossed the threshold downwards, and it basically measures how long does it take the compressor to achieve no compression. So for example, in this example, 50 milliseconds, meaning that from the time that the signal crossed the threshold down, meaning it's minus 10 and below, it will take 50 milliseconds for the compressor to stop compressing the signal. The makeup gain allows us to either decrease or increase the level of the entire signal, and usually it's used to compensate for the level lost caused by the compression. So let's talk about knee for a moment. Soft knee and hard knee basically refers to different behaviors of the compressor. I'm going to use the built-in compressor in Studio One for this example, and here we have a hard knee, meaning once the signal crosses the threshold, we start to compress it, based on the ratio, attack, and release. Soft knee is often referred to as a smoother compression, a smoother feel, but how it actually works is we get a little bit of compression right away without attack and release, even before we cross the threshold. So for example, if we're going to compress 6 dB in the signal and we have a soft knee, the compressor will start to apply gain reduction to the audio even before it reaches the threshold right away. And from the moment we cross the threshold, the attack and release comes into play for the rest of the gain reduction that should be applied to the audio. Now let's look at examples for attack and release. So basically what we have here is a test signal. We have a sine wave, which up until the point over here is below the threshold, and here it's above the threshold. So we can have a better measurement of what's going on. So in this example, we have 50 milliseconds of attack and 50 milliseconds of release. So what we see here, this slope is actually the times that it takes the compressor to compress the signal. And if we'll go to the end of the file, this is how the release looks like. It's the time that it takes the compressor to stop compressing the signal from the time we cross the threshold downwards. And this is how a 500 milliseconds looks like. So as you can see, it took longer for the audio to go back to its original level. Now let's measure the attack again. And as you can see, it took the compressor way longer to fully compress the signal in the 500 milliseconds versus the 50 milliseconds. So that's what's happened to the audio, and that's the correct way to measure the attack and the release. And let's talk about how the compressor works. This is in the context of feed-forward compressors. The signal from the input is being split into two different paths. The first path is the audio path, which the compressor works on and operates on, and this is what we'll actually hear. The second path goes to the detector of the compressor. Based on the settings of our compressor, the detector will decide how much, if any, gain reduction should be applied to the audio. So what we have here, we have the audio path with the D5 compressor by waves on it, and we have the detector path, which we'll not be hearing. It's actually going to the sidechain of the D5 compressor. How can we prove that it's actually working by the sidechain? We can actually mute it. We have no compression. Unmute it, we have more compression. Cool. Now, what we're going to do is to emulate what's going on inside of compressor, or for example, in here, where we have filters on the sidechain. What it actually happens is, on the path of the detector, we have an EQ. So let's check out how it works. If we want the compressor to be less susceptible to the kicks, for example, and to retain more of the low end, we can basically make sure that the detector does not pass this information. So let's check it out. You can go even higher. Let's check it without the EQ. So we see the compressor is compressing the audio of the information which is above this filter, because this filter prevents the compressor from seeing the kicks, so they're preserved and aren't compressed. We can do the same with the snare, for example. Now we're going to audition the sidechain. The compressor will be only compressing the snares. So I hope this short informational video was beneficial for you and that you better understand the controls on the compressor and how to utilize them in your production. So go ahead, make amazing music, and as always, destroying and enjoying, hell yeah!